You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Washington, and it's 2022. Girl, we made it. Happy New Year's. New year, new you. I'm sure you're thinking that, but what does that mean? How are you really going to go about it this year? What are you going to do different this year? Are you ready to feel liberated? Are you ready to come home to yourself, discover your truth, learn how to honor yourself and actually heal? If you are ready, because I know I'm ready, this year is my year. Last year, I told myself I was going to give myself a word. My word of the year was allow. I haven't figured out what my word of the year is for 2022 for this year, but I allowed myself to heal. I allowed myself to be okay with not being okay. I allowed myself time to let go of different things. And more importantly, I allowed myself to work on my healing my inner child. And that's what I want you guys to learn today. Like I wanted to begin the year, start a year off right, then let's get this work getting done. And a huge part of my healing has been working on healing my inner child, learning what does she need to hear? What does she go through and how she's affecting and influencing my decisions, how she's affecting how I show up in life and how we just our day-to-day life. And just it's so important for us to recognize this to really be able to begin the healing process. And that's why I brought on my girl Lani, found her on TikTok, was taking care of my own business, minding my business, doing my thing, just scrolling through TikTok. Girl stopped me in my tracks. She was talking about mothering your inner child. And some people say, oh, channel your inner child, the playfulness. And she was like, what if your inner child was not free? What if your inner child was the most fearful part of your life? And I was like, yo, that was me. So I want her to come on here today and talk to you about, okay, what if, how do you heal your inner child? How do you go through the process of, tapping into your inner child if she wasn't in the happy spot? And how do you heal through all those moments? And so she's an amazing spiritual mentor. She has a wonderful podcast. She's a Patreon, and you definitely want to get on her email list where she writes these love letters to Black women because she's all about that liberation. So y'all stay tuned and let's get this year popping the right way. Hey, Lani, thanks for being a guest on the Hello Well with Danielle podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I want to have this conversation. It's a conversation working on English, especially now in the beginning of the year, because I feel like it's one of those times when we're trying to get our lives together, we're trying to do right. And then, one of the things you always constantly hear when you're on your healing journey about this inner child. What in the world is this inner child people keep talking about?
The inner child is the child inside of you, the younger version of yourself, and it could be many different ages, that just maybe was neglected, didn't get the attention that they need, and sometimes they grow into what I call your shadow. So, a part of you that needs to be acknowledged so that you can continue to heal and show up as your best self now.
And so, does everyone have an inner child? That's a question I always have. Does everyone have an inner child?
Yes, every single one of us has an inner child. Unless you just drop down on this planet as your current self, you definitely have an inner child.
Yeah, no, well, I don't know. I personally didn't drop down as my inner, like as myself. And I wish I did because my inner child, some days, I just, I just wonder like what's going on with her. And but even before we get into that conversation, one thing I know that was an issue for me, so I wanted to kind of clarify this for other people. Is there a difference between the inner child and ego? And what, if so, what is the difference?
I would say yes. I would say an ego is a part of us that is developed like as we grow, right? Your inner child is kind of the same as they were at that time. So For me right now, I'm working on 12-year-old me and then 19-year-old me. And so they both had ego, right? And that developed over time. And as we age, I feel like our ego, I don't want to say gets bigger, but it gets more developed. So I would definitely say they're different. Other people may say different things, but I would say that inner child and ego are two very different things.
No, and I agree with you. I mean, my understanding of the ego is
Mhm.
that the ego was created to protect that inner child. And so it's more of a protector,
Right.
and it creates the stories that we told. Like for me, it was like, okay,
Mhm.
say, my parents actually, well, let's do another one. I won't shade my parents today on on the podcast. Say I had some people who I thought I was friends with, and we went to hang out, and I asked them to hang out with me, and they said no because their parents told them they have something to do, and then I see them out with some other girl, and so my ego is going to tell me that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough to hang out with people, you
Mhm.
need to do more to hang out with people. So the ego will create these stories that we tell ourselves that add on to situations that when we're
Mhm.
triggered. So that's how I was always, that's the way I understand
Absolutely.
the ego versus the inner child. The inner child's kind of this inner thing that is wounded, chilling, but it doesn't have to be wounded. There are people,
Mhm.
I mean, I feel
Right.
like you hear all these people talking about tap into your inner child. And I'm like, are people who
Mhm.
have these inner childs who are fun, free, living life and just, yes? Am I missing something?
Yes. Right. That was my question. And I think how you found me was my TikTok talking about that, because
Yes.
I feel like that was something I was sharing as well. It's like tap back into that energy. And then I had a real epiphany moment of like, girl, as a kid, you was scared than a muck. Like you was not out here free. I maybe had some moments like that, but I don't recall them, right? Like most of my memories of me as a child was as being afraid, as being feeling unsafe, feeling just a lot of low vibrational feelings. So for me, I'm like, if I'm telling that to other people to just tap back into that, they're like, well, she doesn't exist. Or if she does, I don't know where she is. So it's just like, I think there's two different realities sometimes.
And I'm not saying my childhood was horrible because there were great parts of it. And I guess
Right.
I can understand people maybe see tap back into those parts of your life. But there's times where when you talked about your 12-year-old you, your 9-year-old you, I was like, ooh, dang, oh, because I'm thinking about those ages for me. Like 12 was okay. I hella loved middle school. But like 19, I was a hot, bloody mess. I'm like, I look back at 19-year-old me, and I have to admit, 19, 18-year-old me are probably some of the most shameful times in my life. And it sucks because I can say that those are times where I hella didn't love me. Like I would literally punish myself by having sex with people I didn't even want to have sex with. And
Mm.
I can give myself grace now, and I'm healing through it, but I look back and think, dang, what could I have done differently to help her? And so like I want to get back into, does everyone have, or how do you deal with inner child trauma?
Well, trauma, I would say working with someone licensed, because sometimes for
Right.
myself, I would say that I hit a wall, like doing my own inner child healing past a certain point. Like I couldn't get past a certain point without that external perspective. That wasn't a friend, that wasn't my mother, or that wasn't, somebody who grew up with me trying to talk about and
Yeah.
process through the experience. And so for trauma specifically, I would say I started with processing myself, because we know that it's not as accessible as it should be to get a licensed professional to help you work through your trauma. It's more accessible now than before, but it's still an expense, and most of the time an expensive expense. So when you're
Yeah.
starting out, I would really just say like have that conversation with your younger self, give space, really just write down. I'm a huge advocate for journaling. Just writing down the reality of what your inner child experience was, because that's validating it. Because a lot of us have spent so much time invalidating ourselves and our experience, gaslighting ourselves because of other people told us it wasn't that big of a deal, or you knew somebody that went through something that was maybe more severe. So you're like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad for me. So maybe I'm just being dramatic. And so you're just telling yourself all
Mhm.
these stories, ego telling you, trying to protect, well, like, girl, you're fine. But you're still showing up in a way that you're trying to protect yourself. You're not showing up as your full self. So there's some healing that needs to be done there. So I would say first is like validating your experience and talking about your story with yourself. Like, what was your true experience?
Yeah. And I love that you talk about validating it. But even before you get to validating, how do you even get to the point of acknowledging and knowing, like, ooh, maybe there's some inner child stuff that I need to start healing? Like, how does it, like, one of the questions I want to know is, like, how is our inner child and things that we're dealing with, whether it's ego, child, inner child, whatever, how does it influence how we make decisions? How does it influence, the challenges we have in life and the triggers we have in life? And just basically how we live our lives.
Yeah, you said the right word, triggers. And so one of the things that I talk about with my clients, and like I think the first step is noticing your triggers. What are you triggered by, and what does it trigger you to do? So are you triggered to fight, flight, freeze? Like, what are the things that you're naturally like second nature? This is what I've just been doing, right? This is just who I am. That type of stuff that we start to say to ourselves when it's not really who you are. It's what you've learned to do in order to protect yourself. And then we can start to
Ooh,
go
I need you to
back
say that one more
into, okay,
time. It's
where did
who
that begin?
you I was gonna
Who
say, I
you've
need to
learned
hear
to
you say
be
that one
to
more time. It's like,
protect
it's who you learn
yourself.
to be. Yes. Yes.
Yes, who you've learned to be to protect yourself. And it's valid, right? Because that's what you had to do. Like you said, you knew at 19, you can clearly say, I did that because of this. But in that moment, you were coping as best you could. You were doing what you thought was right. You were doing what you thought would serve you. And now looking back, you're like, I was a hot mess. I wasn't doing nothing to serve me. I was actually wilding out and doing things that would invalidate me, doing things that would make me feel like I was worth even less. And so that's where we get into the grace and extending forgiveness towards ourselves. And that's a whole nother level. But it really starts with, okay, what do I do that's just generally out of habit rather than what it is that I want to do, what it is that I desire to do, you know?
No, I think that's important, and just to try and figure out those triggers because we all have them, whether we acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
them or are aware of them, but they're there. They're
Right.
constantly there. I was actually having
Exactly.
a conversation yesterday with a friend who was going through a situation with another friend, and she was talking about, like, oh my God, like, I was just trying to help her out. And then she's like, don't be pissing me off. And I'm like, sweetie, do you not realize you just basically told her in the kindest way, bitch, I told you so? Because that's what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, and she's like, "But
Mm-hmm.
I'm always tired of, I've tried to be there for people and da 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 da." And then within that conversation, she started realizing that, oh, she had hit a trigger. A trigger is that she wants people to be there for her the way she's there for them. And so when they're not, and she sees
Mm-hmm.
something and she feels she needs to say something, that was a trigger. And so having that conversation, and it was a close friend, so I was able to have that conversation with her. But we don't always see our triggers. Are there ways, like, to help us, like,
Yeah.
actually see our trigger clearer?
Yes. For me, what I started with was what was my strongest emotional response, right? And so for me, what mine was to retreat, like fully just soak
Mm,
back in and like take myself away, go away, whether that was me stopping communication, whether that was me just literally leaving the room or like leaving the relationship. What was like, I guess, my most dramatic or most, you know, I don't know how to say it, most visible response. Like
yeah.
what would make me do something that would take me from one place to the completely other end of the spectrum. And that for me was like, okay, this is something I'm bothered here. Like, what is this about? And giving myself space to kind of dive in there. Cause I'm like, where did this come from? When did I start doing this? And at first I was like, I don't even know when it started. I just know that this is who I am. And like I think a lot of people, when we get that, when we want to start to heal, right? Where at first it's just like, well, I don't know. There's so many questions. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. And I think in that moment we need to just continue to ask the question, because when we're going back to our inner child, they have been neglected for a long period of time by the time you start your healing, because most of us, it's been a while, right?
Mhm.
We weren't healing as kids. And so your inner child is not just gonna come out and be like, yeah, girl, this is why you do that. Like, they're in the corner in a
Mhm.
dark room by themselves and they're waiting to be spoken to. And so we need to continue to lean in and continue to ask the questions, which is why I really encourage journaling, because you have a regular practice of communicating with yourself in all different versions of yourself.
And so this may seem like a silly question, but does the inner child ever grow up? Does she ever be like, bet we good, we caught up to you, we all solid?
That is a good question. I would say they don't grow up. I would say they are just not, their wounds are not affecting you in the here and now, right? So you're able to have a healthy
Yeah.
conversation with your inner child, and they're no longer showing up in a way that's telling you, no, 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 we can't do that because that's not safe. They're allowing you to do and explore and be more calm and feel more secure and feel more safe in your actions that you take. And so it's just like a healthy back and forth. Like you can know, like, okay, girl, we good. And like she's like, okay, we good. And y'all like, yep, we good. Like that's what I view it as. It's like
Yeah.
just a more healthy conversation that you're able to have with yourself.
No, and I totally agree with you because I don't think the inner child ever grows up, but I do agree that she may be a little bit quieter or whatever. And it makes me think about when you were talking about it, like our inner child wants this inner child ego. Well, they're two different things, but our inner child has not felt safe many times. And so she goes to
Right.
this what we call our comfort zone. And so even when we're
Mhm.
trying to heal and do better, sometimes our inner child would be like, no, 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 I ain't ready for this. And we're trying to do better. And you're like, but dude, I'm trying to do better. Why are you fighting me? But not realizing that when you are on this healing journey, your inner child is going to be triggered, even if you are doing something good, because it's something different. And we forget that because,
Yes.
like, well, I don't understand it. But the reality is, when we get out of our comfort zone for the good, or even if we change something for the bad, we should be changing something for the bad. It's new year, new you. But your inner child, whatever you're doing something different, your inner child will be like, "Whoa, hold up." I feel like it's like that Drake gift, like, hold up. She's like, hold up. I don't know what you're doing. This ain't what I signed up for. And will show up in the most awkward moments. Like I remember I was doing my Reiki master training, and my inner child was like, mm-mm, honey, honey, we're not doing this. We are going to fight this. Oh, I think you need to have a migraine right now. Oh, I think you need to start
Mhm.
being nauseous for some reason. I'm just like, and I had to sit with it. And when I start sitting with it and talking to her, and figuring out what part of
Mhm.
me was what child of what age of my childhood was having issues, that's when I was able to work through it. Um, Long point to say is how do you I mean, I think I intuitively kind of feel like I know. How do you know when you're working with a certain age?
Um, for me, my journal is my best friend because I mean, I wasn't journaling as a child, but when I started my healing journey, I processed through a lot of different things. And so, how I know I'm talking to a specific age or working through something that happened at a specific age is I remember like the first time I may have felt that feeling. So, whatever my triggered
Yeah.
response is, okay, if it's to be, for me, it's like this feeling of unsafety and like I gotta run. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm freaking out. Like, I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking back to when is the first time I really felt unsafe. And usually we can remember that. Like usually it was a traumatic
Yeah.
moment where we felt like, our whole world has shifted, I don't know what's going on anymore. And it is generally a nervous system shift as well. Like your literal the way you move about in your life neurologically is different. And so you typically can remember that. You can tap back into that. For some people, it may be too traumatic, but for most of us, we know that something has happened the first time we felt that feeling. And
Yeah.
that's why a licensed professional helps as well, because that was one of the first times I got asked the question, like, when did you first start feeling like that? And I was like, girl, what? That's a good question. I don't know. Like, and so I had to like
That's what I'm paying you
process
for,
it and
sis.
journal it. Right, like tell me. Look back into my memories. I don't know. And so like that's the more it's the more of asking those questions. So if you don't know when it started, continuing to ask or just continuing to sit and think, okay, what has my life looked like? When did I feel this way? When did I most feel this way? Even if you can't remember the exact moment that something happened that shifted for you, when did you start to feel that a lot before now? Because again, this is learned behavior. You've learned to show up this way in order to protect yourself. And so, how did you learn it? Where did you learn it from? Was it like just in interactions with family? Like, was it mom and like mama always did it, so I did it? Okay, so that still gives you a root. We got to get back to the root of it in order to start to heal it. So that's what I do for me.
No, I love that. And it goes back to that whole questioning thing you were talking about. And when you said that, I was like, oh, yeah, bet. Because I do kind of figure out, okay, when did I first feel this? And that's when I'm able to figure out, okay, this is this age. And I do agree that,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who have experiences where they've just blacked out their childhood. There are parts of my childhood I blacked out until I was in my 20s, and I blacked out being molested. And I just didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and it came to me one day. I was like, oh, and, like, I had to deal
Yeah.
with it. But I was just like, it took working with a professional therapist to kind of be like, "Oh, okay, this is why your mind was ready to process this." But, like, I was hurt for a while, the fact that I was like, "How did I not remember this?" I'm like, "My memory's so good." But I had to, again, give myself grace for the fact that I wasn't ready to deal with this. What are other examples? I know you talked about journaling. What are other examples of ways to start healing your inner child?
I love guided meditations that are specifically for inner child healing. Those have
Mhm.
been so impactful for me. Like the visualization techniques of literally seeing your inner child at a specific age and giving them what you wanted to receive. Because energetically, there is a shift there that happens as well. My first inner child meditation, it was literally like 12 minutes. And when I tell you I was sobbing, like me and my inner child
Yeah.
had let some stuff go because we were in a shared space together. So sometimes, like, journaling can be more thoughts, right? It can be literally getting your thoughts and all, like, it can get some energy onto the paper. But sometimes visualization is a little bit more powerful because you can see and kind of feel that experience. So you can see yourself at a younger age and visit them, speak with them, communicate with them, and let them know that they're safe. So those are kind of like my top two for sure, is doing that. And then also just sharing community with other people talking about the experience. That's one of the reasons why I hosted my first retreat, was literally because our stories have value and our stories can heal ourselves as well as others. Like that catharsis you get from sharing that
Yeah.
allows somebody else to, it kind of goes like an infinity, like you're going in and out and you all are letting it all go together. And that releasing is one of the most powerful ways we can heal our inner child, because they're holding on to so much at such a young age, or even just younger than what you are now. They're holding on to a lot, and it's just like that can get caught up in your body. And if your energy can't flow when all that energy is locked up, so just releasing in whatever way you can. So communication, writing it down, visualizing, all of that is different forms of release, in my opinion.
Yeah, Reiki, we were talking about energy being trapped in your body. Reiki for me has been really a helpful way for me to help release some of those things that were trapped. One of the things that really, really was truly helpful to me was writing a letter to my younger self at whatever age that I was feeling triggered at, and writing a letter and thinking about what is it that she needs to hear? What can I say now
Mm-hmm.
of like what she needs to hear to her to be okay for us to move together forward? And that has been very powerful for me. I don't know if you've ever tried doing that, but that's something that has worked really well for me. And I do it often because there's different times in my life or different ages I need to work through, but I might have to write that letter again because we're at a different level in the game. I'm like, okay, we're at level 2. Now we moved up to level 4. And at level 4, she's like, nah, sis, nah, we were cool. I rock with you at 2, 3. I was kind of okay. 4, I ain't messing with you. So I do feel like writing that letter and telling her what she needs to hear and honoring her
Mm-hmm.
voice, because my inner child wasn't seen. Like she just
Mm.
was invisible at all
Mm-hmm.
ages. And I'm like getting emotional for
Yeah.
a second. I was like, damn, that hurt. It still hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, it does hurt. And acknowledge, that's what I'm saying about validating that. Like that hurts because a lot of us as children, our emotions were brushed off, right? And so a lot of the people that
Yeah.
I end up being in community with now are also empaths. So we were very sensitive to other people's energy without even knowing what that meant. And so you were called too sensitive. You were called dramatic when you were literally just trying to exist and figure out why you feeling all these feelings. And for me, I'm at the time, I know that, well, now I know that my mother did not have the capacity to always check in on my emotions. She was just trying to make sure we had food on the table and that we were able to
Hmm.
survive. But as a child, that's what I needed. I needed somebody to help me process, like, girl, I don't know why I'm crying today. Like, I just feel a lot of things and I'm processing this. And I also felt, I resonate with that. I felt very invisible. And then the times I was visible, it was to be criticized and to be bullied and to be made fun of. And it's like, well, I really don't want to be seen now, but then in the times I want to be seen, nobody can see me. So it's this constant
Yeah.
back and forth. And that, again, reflecting on that can impact and allows me to assess how I'm showing up now. Like, am I showing up in a way where I'm retreating? You know, am I trying to be invisible now when I really want to be seen? You know, how are my old habits continuing to show up in my day to day life? And like you said, our inner child gonna be like, girl, we're not gonna do that because I tried that before and it hurt a lot. So no, right? So because it
Yeah.
literally changed our nervous system, right? So we're showing up in a different way. This is literally unsafe. It feels like my life is going to end. So I'm not about to play with you. We're not about to try this new thing. We're not about to venture out. And so it's a constant back and forth you feel with yourself. So you literally fighting yourself sometimes, and that's where the conversation needs to be had. Like, I love the writing the letter. I definitely have written letters to younger versions of myself. And also in my workshop that I talked about on that TikTok, that's what we do, is like writing it out, talking to that version of you, having a conversation, even if it's your first conversation, and most likely it will not be the last. So, you know, it's just a time
Yeah.
and space literally just to hold yourself. We need to dedicate time to that.
And you talked about talking to yourself. I mean, we both did. Like, how do you start? Like, hey, girl, hey, like, what are tips you have for talking to your inner child?
It's a lot of different ways. I mean, I'm a talker in general. It's probably why I have a podcast, why I'm on your podcast. So I
Yes.
like mirror work. So I'll talk
Yeah.
to myself in the mirror. In my workshop that I do, I have my clients bring a picture of their younger selves if they have that, you know, but we also have the visualization techniques to remember ourselves at a certain age, right? Or literally journaling it. I kind of tie all those things together in the workshop, but those are the ways I would say that people can start to get comfortable, like creating a sacred space for yourself to do that, right? So if it's just maybe
Mhm.
on once a week where you sit down and look at a picture of your younger self and you try to feel what she felt, right? Remember what her
Yeah.
experience was. What was she going through at that time? Because that picture was a snap in time. What was she feeling? You know, tapping into that. And then you can start to ask her questions like, what do you want to tell me? What was your reality? What have I blocked out? Because I agree with you. There were moments of my childhood, like 7 years gone. I don't know what I was doing then. Like, I have no idea. I need to tap back into that space to remember even what the experience was. So again, inviting your inner child center stage, because she's all the way in the back of the arena. She in the bathroom, okay? She not coming out quite yet. So giving that space, like asking her to come forward, telling her she has a space to come forward, giving her the safe space to come forward. So that would just be the invitation, I think, is the most important thing. The invitation in the form of writing, in the form of just actually just out your mouth talking to yourself or looking at a picture.
No, I think that's great. I think I never thought about looking at a picture, and I was just like, I like that would be some emotional ash ish right there. But I'm like, I see it being good. I love the fact that you brought up mirror work because I do think looking at yourself and talking to yourself, especially when you are, whether you're talking to yourself and saying it's okay, da da da, da, but also looking at yourself and, tapping into that inner child and saying, hey, you're safe. Like, literally
Mm-hmm.
looking at yourself and saying you're safe. Like, when I've done that because I had issues like you with safety, I'm like, "Girl, do we have the same parents? Did I miss something? Were we switched at birth?" Separated at birth, actually, would be the right one. Um, but, like, when I've had those moments in the mirror and told myself, "You're safe. You are love. You are loved." Like, looking in my eyes versus like, you can say it like, "Oh, hey, yeah, you're safe." If you're not seeing yourself, you're like, "Mhm, sure, great." But there's just something that
Right.
there's a connection that goes when you're actually seeing yourself and like being intentional about it. I love that.
Mhm.
I totally love that.
Yes.
Do you, when you feel triggers, do you actually physically feel them? I mean, I feel them in my body. Do you physically feel them in your body?
Yes. Now that I pay attention to it, I can like identify that I feel it mostly in my gut. It's like somebody punched me in my gut. Or like my heart will literally feel like it shrank in size. I don't know if that's the best description for
Yeah.
it, but like I feel it deeply. Like it's like a new wound. It feels like somebody just like grabbed my heart and just like pushed it down like no. And so, but now that I can pay attention to that, because for so long I was detached from my body, like I was existing, but I was disassociating from my actual experience. And so I had to learn how to identify, like, what is my body feeling right now? So I can kind of tie it back to what was I feeling back then, you know, because again, I feel like it was suppressed. So I just was like, this is not what we're feeling because somebody told us that this is not right. So we're not going to feel it. It don't exist. And so you have to learn how to feel that again.
And I think that's great because I think so many people don't know that that they dissociate the feeling in their body with the emotions that are happening. How did you go about learning to connect the two back again? Because I think it is very important. I think our body tells us warning signs way before our mind gets up, catches up.
Yes, I would say sitting with it. Like as a person who have I've learned to intellectualize my emotions. Like I would process them here.
Mhm.
Like this makes sense that you're sad, Lonnie, but I'm not feeling the sadness because I just wasn't allowing myself like mind and heart to connect, mind and body to connect. And so again, journaling. I feel like people would be like, "Girl, you always talk about this journaling," but it is very impactful. It allows you to sit with it because as you're writing it out, I've had plenty of times where I'm just shedding so many tears as I'm writing and I'm feeling it, and my hand will just like intuitively go to my heart, right, to hold
Yeah.
my heart or just to hold myself in that moment. And I think we need to just be better, do better at um sitting in that emotion, because that is what allows it to come up rather than, you know, you feel it and you're like, it's about to hurt, I'm gonna close the journaling session done. That was good. We did that. And that's how we sometimes can get a little bit superficial in our healing. And we're getting to it, but we're not really getting to the root of it. And I can say this because I still do this. Like I literally, this is why I'm on my sabbatical now, is because spirit has continuously brought me back to, like I said, 12-year-old Lani and now 19-year-old Lani. And they are needing to feel some things fully within me. And I have been resisting it. And I also have been an adult trying to live my life and take care of myself. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to take this time to sit with it. But not everybody has that. So I would say for
Mhm.
people, you know, it's just like taking the time, maybe like setting time for yourself out of the week. Like, this is my time to sit with it. It could be 1 hour out the week. We got a lot of hours in a week now. We could sit down for an hour and say, this is what I'm going to work on, work through. 12-year-old so and so wants to process this. So I'm going to sit with that traumatic experience. I'm going to sit and I'm going to have my support. If you need support, I believe in grieving partners, having somebody there with you to hold you, having somebody to follow up with, so you're not just, because you can stay there, right? It can get very easy to stay in that
Mhm.
emotion. So how can we allow it to come up, right? So that's why I think grieving partners are good, or talking with somebody after you've processed it, because you can get it out, right? Not still just it's taking over your whole body, right? Getting that moment of
Yeah.
getting it out on paper or wherever you want to get it out, and then speaking it out. And then I love the mirror work as well, like looking into your eyes and saying, this was our experience and I love you and I know it was so hard for you then, but we are here now, and we are here now, and we can move forward, and I promise you we're going to be safe, and I promise that I'm going to take care of you, and I promise that I'm going to protect you. So giving yourself, saying the words that you needed to hear in that moment, and affirming yourself in the now, because you needed that version of you needed it, and you need it right now too. So like affirming yourself, all
Mhm.
versions of you, the words that you desire to hear, and they're going to flow intuitively. We're going to know what words we need to hear. So it's just about continuing to do that and affirming yourself, telling yourself a new story. Because for so long, we've had this narrative of this is what the real is. And that's not the case anymore. That is what the real we've decided, because that was the one that helped us to get through. but we don't want to just get through anymore. We want to live vivaciously. We want to live, we want to thrive. And so we got to create that space for ourselves to do that.
Yeah. That the real that we created to survive. And that's why so many of us are still in survival mode, because we're still
Mm-hmm.
in that story. And for us to, what I keep calling this wellness revolution, and start thriving and healing, is we need to start recognizing and being aware that's a story. Okay, let's investigate how
Mm-hmm.
the story happened, and then let's start redefining how we show up so we can thrive. Um, but it's choice. I say it all the time. It's everything that we do, this healing, inner child work, reparenting and mothering your inner child, is a choice. You got to decide, is am I ready? And sometimes you're not, and it's okay. Sometimes you need to, like you're talking about, I
Mm-hmm.
need to take a pause. I need a sabbatical. I need
Yeah.
to, maybe stop on this part but work on this other part. But it's all a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I hella appreciate you
Yes.
being here, and like your TikToks are bomb, by the way. And so, besides TikTok, or you please tell people how to find you on TikTok, but like, how can people connect with you and work with you and just continue to grow and heal with you and be a part of your community?
Yes, thank you. So TikTok is one, but I'm on sabbatical right now, so it's meaning I'm also on social media hiatus. And I'll be on that until sometime in January. I haven't decided quite yet. But my TikTok and my Instagram is loving the journey with two G's and two Y's. And then I also have a website, which is where you'll get a direct prompt to join my email list. It's lovingthejourney.com with two G's and two Y's. And my email list is really where I focus a lot of my energy. It's where I write my love letters to Black women because I work solely with Black
Mm.
women. And I share, like, kind of this conversation that we're having now. I share my insights along my own healing journey because I know that's part of my path, is to learn and then share what it is that I've learned. And so that's why I'm a spiritual mentor. So like I can help people and provide
Yeah.
that mentorship for them along the journey. And so that's where I share that information. And I have a signature workshop, the Art of Mothering Yourself workshop, that's going to be coming back in the new year as well. So just once you're on the email list, you get all the information, you get all the tea, you get everything first. Social media and the other things, get them after the fact. So I would definitely say go to my website, scroll halfway down the page, and you'll get the prompt to join the email list, and then you'll be in the community, in the family. But if you are looking for like a monthly membership type of thing, I have an online community called Patreon. Well, that's not my community, but the website
Oh, the cute.
is
Oh,
Patreon. Patreon,
Patreon girl.
yeah. Girl, I wish. Okay. Patreon.com/loving the journey. And that one is just one G and one Y. And that is where I share. We have monthly liberation workshops focused on different topics around healing. We have monthly sister circles because sometimes you just need to sit and talk to your girls about, like, girl, I'm healing and this is crazy. Like, is it crazy for you too? And it's like, yeah, we just need to talk about that with each other. And I'm a reader, so I'm a spiritual diviner. So I intuit messages from the divine, from the universe, and I share those within that community as well, just to help us along our healing journey. When spirit calls me to, I'll be like, all right, y'all, spirit got a message. And then I share it there. So those are really the main ways to stay in community, in close, intimate community with me.
I appreciate you, because my mission and dream in life is for us, especially Black women, to be liberated, to be free. And we
Mm-hmm.
need people like you to help us on the spiritual journey, because it ain't always easy and it ain't always comfortable. And this inner child, ooh, should be something at all ages.
She do.
So at end of every
Yes.
episode, I like to ask quick fire questions. Nothing crazy, nothing like elaborate. So you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So the first question I always like to ask people is, what does living hella well mean to you?
Mm. Living hella well means making my life a holistic healing process. So doing the things that people might not consider healing, right? So drinking enough water, right? getting my time outdoors, reading a book, doing the things that my spirit calls me to do that make me feel like I'm well, make me feel like I'm filled up, those types of things. And that's what makes life worth it, right? Like that holistic piece, not just doing the shadow work and crying your heart out for weeks straight, like just living all around in a way that makes you feel like your cup is full. That's what I would say is living hella well.
That's the life that I want. I love I love your description. All right, aisle or window?
Ooh, window.
What's always in your travel bag?
I always got a book, even though I don't always read it, but I always bring a book every single time. And I always buy a book at the airport too. Even when I don't need it, I do it anyway.
Girl, I do that too and be like, girl, you know, I ain't gonna read this book, but I'm like, just in case, just in case. And the time don't bring the book, I'm like, dang, I sure wish I had a book. I'm like, these books at the bookstore are too
Literally.
expensive. I ain't buying them books. I feel you on that one.
Same.
What advice would you give to your future self?
Ooh, to my future self. Future Lani, I want her to be more free. Right now, I know the whole point of living liberated. That's like my motto, right? But I want her to be as free as she possibly can in every single aspect. Releasing the pressure. So I would tell her, be you, boo. That's it. Like, be you, no holds barred, no pedaling back on things that you have said because it might make somebody feel away. Just stand on what you said and be yourself. That's it.
Facts. On that note, we out. Thank you so much, Lani, for being a guest. Thank you for your spirit, your energy, and being a part of the collective of healing and making sure that we are free because that's what we need. We need to be free. Your future self, my
Thank you
future
for
self, and
having
all of our
me.
future selves. You're welcome. All right,
Yes,
y'all. I will see
yes.
y'all next week on another episode of the Hello Well with Danielle podcast. Other than that, see you later. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.